it's still there.
The meeting doesn't start till 10:30.
Well, it says it's recording, so. Okay, here's your.
First person at the meeting.
Here's your hoodie doogie.
Okay.
This is yours. I hope I have everything in here.
I printed everything.
I got the bill and all that in there.
Oh, excellent.
Here's what's sign in for unbelievers.
Oh, you want me to sign in?
I think only people who are not,
On the board.
yeah. Oh. Excuse me, sir. Hello? Buffalo is in. Can you see us? We can't hear you. He's got the sound muted, I think.
Oh.
Because I can't hear him. Is your sound muted? We can't hear you.
This is why I get here early.
This
is why I get here early.
We're gonna have to find help because we can see them and they can see us and they can hear us, but we can't hear them. Maybe the person who fits the switch isn't in there yet, because these guys might not know what to do with it. Do you know who these people are, Ian? Are they people that should know how to work the switch?
I have no clue.
You don't know who they are?
I have such a hard time seeing.
Yeah, because it's so small.
Well, it's so far away.
I'm going to go look in my papers and see if I can figure out who takes care of this, and I'll tell them that they can't hear us. I mean, we can't hear them.
Okay. Thank you.
But make sure that it's on green when you talk.
Yeah, I'm actually on right now, right?
Yes.
I'm going to mute myself. Hi, everyone. Can you guys hear me?
Yes. Can you hear us?
I can. Thank you to whoever fixed that.
Hey, Ann, how you doing?
Good. How are you?
I'm doing okay.
Hi, Ann.
Hi. I always feel so disjointed at these meetings, all alone in this big room.
You would think they would have more people in Buffalo.
Don't you have one I can use?
Oh yeah, I have one.
We did have a board member here for a while, but he resigned. So it's just me.
If I can use that, then you
Okay.
can sit over there.
Yeah, I can do it. It's not just you, it's you.
It's me. You guys are much clearer in New York than usually.
That's good.
Must be the weather.
Must be. How is it down there?
The day before.
It's hot.
Wasn't it 10:30?
Close to 60.
I want to make sure I have Wi-Fi.
No, it was 10:30.
Oh my God, it's like 28 degrees in Buffalo.
Yeah, but tomorrow it will be 30. By tonight it will be 30 here.
That's a big drop.
Yeah,
She's in Albany.
crazy.
I can't see you, Anthony. I can't see you.
Train got delayed this morning.
This is Ann Orson on the screen.
The Long Island Railroad, you can't.
Hey, there you go.
what's up?
Now I can see everybody.
Florence. Florence.
All right.
Can't see
That better?
themselves.
I'm so far away.
So far away.
How was your Thanksgiving?
I was thinking that, but I didn't sing it, because if I sang it,
Come on,
You guys are
Anthony,
all
you and
right.
I, the duo.
you guys would all run out.
How was your Thanksgiving?
Oh, pretty good. It comes and goes so fast.
I love Thanksgiving. It's
The
such
best
a
thing about
nice-
Thanksgiving is the turkey sandwich the next day.
Leftovers.
That's it.
In our house we have pasta too, so
Oh, yeah, huh?
yeah. I had 2 Thanksgivings.
Well, that's good.
One with my wife's family and one at my sister's house. My brother-in-law works security down at the Freedom Tower. He was a cop for 20 years and now he works down there, so he works on Thanksgiving. So she had Thanksgiving on Friday, so I took a ride up. And,
I know the schedule. My son's a cop.
yeah.
My other son's a the court officer, so we work around their schedule.
Yeah. So it was nice though, having 2 Thanksgivings and got to see some of my cousins. So I live in Westchester and they all live in Rockland. I don't get across the bridge all that often.
What's the bridge cost these days?
I don't know. I think it's still, with your Easy Pass, still 4 1/4, but we don't know yet what's going to happen because they're not finished. They're not finished fixing. They're adding a walk bike observation area to the northern side of the bridge.
It still can't be like Verrazano Bridge.
I know it's really expensive there.
I don't
So
know
is the
what
George
it's up
Washington.
to.
$20?
I think
18
so. I
bucks?
think it's up to
What?
19 or
Well,
something.
I know because I do the George Washington Bridge. I did for 4 years the George Washington Bridge. My daughter went to school in Baltimore, so my round trip to Baltimore on just tolls alone was $62. It's insane, and $18 to cross the GW. And I got a break.
It's economic slavery.
All about this.
Because if you happen to be one of those people that only makes minimum wage,
Yeah,
and your mother lives in Staten Island and you live in Brooklyn,
yeah, it hurts.
it takes 2 hours
Yeah.
to make the toll.
I know.
This is an overall number of dispenses, right? It's not like new. This is an overall number. How many we have?
Yeah,
This is pretty crazy.
Nassau County.
Yeah.
I know. Tell me about it.
Wow.
Tell me about it.
Wow. It's like an outlier on this map.
They should all move to Westchester.
No, Westchester's 50. Look,
Wow.
right? But look at this, Suffolk, all of Long Island.
Mhm.
You guys are really clustered around there.
Yes.
I'm worried about the Costco down my block.
Oh, I'm surrounded.
It's so crazy.
Do you guys
Wi-Fi in this building.
No, we do not, sorry.
I'm sorry, we never met.
I think we did.
Did we? I
Yeah.
don't remember.
I'm Janetta.
Tony.
Nice to
Oh, that's
meet
right. I
you.
remember now.
Yeah.
Yeah, I know. I haven't been here. In a
No,
while,
you
so-
were here.
Right, I was here
No.
when you were.
Yes, I wasn't here last meeting either.
I wasn't here
so
last
that-
meeting.
Okay, yeah.
It becomes a blur.
I know.
My whole year has been a blur.
This year went by quickly.
No, but I had some tragedy. Lost my wife in February.
Oh, I'm sorry.
Really?
And that's why I was kind of. Yeah, Thanksgiving was tough.
Oh, gee.
Yeah, she got cancer, and she's gone in about 10 weeks. Yeah, it just went. She had surgery to remove some cancer from a certain area, and they removed it. Everything was going okay, and then all of a sudden, jumped in. They found it in her lungs.
I know where they found the diagnosis.
Yeah, whatever was in the other space, we sensitized her lung, and it changed, and it went crazy, went all over the place, and she was gone in about 10 weeks.
Oh, sorry to hear that.
Yeah, it happened back in February.
Oh my god.
So that's why I said when you asked me how I was doing, I said, yeah, I'm hanging in. That's why I'm hanging in. But I have my daughter. And I have a big family, and I have a good support system. My neighbors. My neighbors are the absolute best.
That's important.
As soon as they found out, I was finding food on my doorsteps, and no name, like emailing everybody. You gotta let me know who it is, so at least I can thank you. And they're still pitching in, and you know.
All of my neighbors are family,
Yeah, my neighbors too. All
but
family.
real family.
Oh, really?
We have 4 houses all
Oh, yeah, one of those
together.
little cul-de-sac things.
Yeah.
That's cool.
And
That's
then
nice.
my mother-in-law is on one side, my
Oh, that's
wife's
nice.
cousin is on the other. The other cousin is behind us.
It's funny, like my family and my wife's family never understood just how close we were in the neighborhood until this happened, and they all of a sudden realized just how close.
Good morning.
Morning.
Yeah, that's very important. How long you been living where you live?
15 years. 15 years. In fact, this Saturday night we have our progressive holiday party. Go from one house to one thing.
Oh,
another
cool.
House, another house. And it's all walking,
Right.
so you can have an extra glass of wine and
Yeah, right.
hobble home.
Yeah, we do the same.
And the rule is if you can't,
Well, you know, there's no driving. So
and no driving.
Frankie's having.
And if you
Christmas Eve.
and if you can't hobble home, there's always a couch, and we'll wake you up tomorrow morning, feed
my
you, and
God,
then send
that's
you back,
great.
send you home,
Yep.
which has happened a few times.
Ooh, I wonder if my neighbors do that. We moved into a house last year, but it's like a nice community, you
Right.
know? So
Yeah, it's really nice. It's fun. We have a block party and we do other things.
everyone's houses in this way is so nice.
Yeah, everybody lives like my neighborhood. We're in Westchester. We're not far apart. We're really not close. And,
Yeah.
you know, and so Saturday night is that, and it's not unusual for somebody to throw out an email. You know, when the weather's nice, fire pit at my house.
Yeah, that's
Bring a
great.
bottle of wine and whatever you want. Just
Right.
hang out.
Right.
Yeah, so it's nice.
It doesn't have to be fancy.
No, don't have to sit in the backyard looking at the stars.
now?
Don't have to be fancy at all. That's nice to have. You know, we've thought about that.
Yes, I can hear you.
You can hear us? Okay.
Buying a
Yes.
big,
Okay.
It just sort of
Good.
happened because Grandpa bought the property in
Ernita?
1935.
Yes.
Okay, I just want to make sure you can hear us. Great, thank you.
So he built the first house, which was just a summer bungalow, and they lived in Brooklyn, but they would live out here, live in Massapequa in the summer. And then they converted it to a all-year house.
Good morning, Forrest.
Built the house in Brooklyn. And then the one daughter got married, that's my mother-in-law. So he bought
A little more so, yeah.
property
Got
from
off a
grandfather.
wolf.
Then the other daughter got married.
So,
They bought a property,
that whole
built the house
that show
behind
was a
them.
mess.
Then there was this one more piece of property, and when I got married to my wife, who was in the family, house in between So,
Can't beat that.
No.
Really can't beat family. It's just, I live in Pleasantville, and my wife's side, everybody is within 5 minutes, 10 minutes of
We
each
try
other.
to connect.
there was another tragedy in
Yeah,
Pleasantville.
just this
Well,
week.
it's not working.
Guy murder-suicide.
Yeah.
2 doors away from the school.
Right.
Romer's the street that leads
She
to the
told
high
me that
school.
they didn't
Oh,
have it.
that was a that.
I don't
I
Yeah.
know why.
Yeah, it was right in my town, and just caught everybody, my sleepy town, totally by
Okay.
surprise. I don't know them because the kids are really small, and my daughter's been out of the school for the last, she graduated college. But I understand they were lovely people.
Would Wi-Fi be
They said he was overstressed, but nobody really understands why. Why he did that.
No one picks up on it to see that.
Well, because it was everybody they talked to and everybody they interviewed, either locally
Okay,
or.
good morning. I'd like to call the meeting to order. Does everyone hear me?
Everybody was okay. No. I understand. Real tragedy.
Put the volume up. Okay. This is the December 10th, 2019 meeting of the New York State
Just starting the
Hearing Aid
meeting.
Dispensing Advisory
My
Board. I don't
condolences.
think we are.
Chappaqua is still in mourning.
Tony.
Time to call to order too.
There.
Do you have murders this
All
week?
right. Okay. This is the December 10th, 2019 meeting of the New York State Hearing Aid Dispensing Advisory Board. We'll begin with a roll call. We'll go around the tables in each location, beginning with Albany. I'm Jody DeLallo, Department of State.
Dave Mossberg, Department of State. Jason Kramer, Education Department.
Eric Freeman, Hearing Aid Board Member.
Allison Lacey, Department of State. Marcella Rose, Department of State.
Lon Butler, public member who is a hearing aid user.
Denise Tidings, Department of State.
And Mary Jo Moore, Department of State.
Buffalo.
Ann Orsini, board member.
New York.
Anthony Massara, board member.
Jerry Bergman, board member, New York City, consumer rep.
Ernita Gant, Department of State.
Peter Fisher, board member.
Janetta Shapiro, board member.
Okay, I believe we have a quorum. All right. Denise, is there a way to turn up the volume in New York? We're having a hard time hearing.
Ernita.
Okay.
Yeah.
I got it.
Turn the volume up.
Is that what?
That's
No,
not-
And
that's
if you,
out.
I don't know whether you can turn up your volume anymore either, or just, you may have to speak up a
They
little.
can't hear us. They have to turn their volume.
Yeah, I think.
Because we can hear you guys loud and clear. Maybe y'all need to turn the volume up over there.
Yeah, because when we turn this up, we hear them louder.
Right. Because if we turn our volume
Dave
up,
seems
it's
to think we need
just
to turn it
louder.
up on our end.
Okay, that's what I turned that all
On
the way
the
up to the
maybe
top.
on the remote.
How's that? Is that better?
You hear us better?
Can you hear us?
Sorry, it's got to be on that one.
Hello? Albany?
One more time, Ernita? Oh, yes, much better. Very good.
All right.
Thank you. So before we get started, I just wanted to welcome, we have a new representative for the Commissioner of New York State Education Department, and that's Jason Kramer. Welcome.
Thank you.
So we can begin with the approval of the meeting summaries for March 25th, 2019 and September 9th, 2019. I believe Denise sent them ahead of the meeting. If someone needs a minute or two to take a look, otherwise I'll request a motion to approve the minutes.
I'll make a motion to approve.
Okay, second.
I'll second that.
All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Anyone opposed? Okay, motion approved. Subcommittee report, enforcement report. Ernita.
Okay. Yes, good morning. Since our September 9th meeting, we had very little activity in regard to complaints received. We received 2 complaints during that period since the last meeting. We closed out 2 complaints during that same period. We have pending 13 complaints. The 2 complaints that were closed out, they were both closed out, no violation. One complaint involved the complainant concerned about the dispenser not filling out a Veterans Administration form that she needed to fill out. The response was that the form required a physician's signature, not a dispenser's signature, so that was closed out, no violation. And the other complaint involved allegation of forged documentation that was unsubstantiated. That's the report.
Does anyone have questions for Anita? Okay, we'll move along to the processing report.
Just a small question on the one where it was where physician signatures.
Here.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Where there was a physician signature required for the VA.
For a VA form, yeah.
Right. There's a program now which is put into law called DeServe, which allows dispensers to assist with VA fittings and so forth like this. Any way to get that to move along in New York State?
To get it what?
Have it help move it along in New York State so that dispensers can also assist in VA fittings and go along those lines to help our veterans. Right now, most of the time, unless they're within 50 miles, they go to a VA clinic or they have to go to an approved audiology center, but that's in the process of being revamped a little bit. But anyway, for New York State to help that along so that we can help our veterans. Myself, I see a lot of veterans. I don't charge them for any of that service, and that's fine. But if someone comes to my office and needing a signature from a physician, that's going to hold up their process.
Denise?
Are you asking about statutory, something that affects the statute? You're looking for...
Well, if it was simply a signature needed, if it was along the lines of audiological for testing that was done at a provider's office, how can we assist more?
I mean, I'm not familiar with the program, but it sounds as if like this is some sort of VA requirement because you said that they either go to a VA clinic or
right.
So whatever the requirements are that are being imposed, it sounds to me as if it's a federal requirement as opposed to a state law requirement.
Right, that's why I was wondering if there's anything that we can help pass that along to help that information get out there as dispensers.
Pass what information? I don't understand.
To help the process get to, so dispensers can help our. But
it would be a federal requirement. So, like, if it involves providing, services to veterans under sort of a VA program, again, I'm not familiar with it, but generally those programs are, subject to laws, federal regulations. And so the state would sort of be preempted, I think, from, mandating that the VA accepts something based upon the state level. But it's something that I can certainly look into.
Thank you.
And report back at the next board meeting.
Thank you.
Any questions for Anita? Any additional questions for Anita? Okay.
It's not, this is Jerry Bergman in New York City. I'm trying to use all of my brain power to keep up with the discussion, but as a point of order, I'd like to remind everybody that I can only follow the meeting with the help of CART, which I'm receiving, but the CART operator does not have everyone's name. So the fact that 2 of the meeting offices are remote, there's absolutely no way, given the way the cameras operate, for me to have a clue as to who is speaking. So if everyone doesn't mind, kindly state your name before you speak, and that way the transcript I'm looking at will help me understand who's speaking, if that's okay.
Yes, Jerry, we will do that. This is Jody DeLallo. I'm going to move along to the processing report, which I'm on the agenda for that. In your folders, as always, there's licensing statistics. There's the current statistics for 2019 and also 2018 stats. And it shows the hearing aid dispenser businesses, the numbers, licensed, broken down by county. And then there's a business list with the numbers by class, by license type. And then the third page is the total dispensers broken down by type and by county. So if that's information that you are interested in looking at, that is in your meeting folders. We just wanted to mention briefly, a while back we had tried to track like rejections for our application processing, and we made some changes to our license applications. It seemed to improve the rejection rate a little, but when we do receive applications for licensure, it seems that the most rejected applications are due to incomplete applications or submissions that are incomplete, either the form itself or documentations, proof of education, that type of thing. So I just wanted to put it out there that if we get a complete application, typically we don't have to reject, but we do have to reject, and that of course delays processing and licensure to the individuals. Any questions about that? Okay, then we'll move along to the education examination report. Allison?
Good morning. This is Allison Lacey, Department of State, and I'm going to give the education report this morning. The Bureau of Educational Standards has begun to audit our hearing aid dispenser renewals. We decide whom to audit based on renewals that don't indicate approval code numbers or don't appear to include T-coil, infection control, and the New York State federal law in the counts of the required hours. These renewal applications are not processed and they're sent to us to be audited for compliance. And a renewal license is only granted when we receive satisfactory proof that the education has been completed. To date, we've audited 36 licensees and 24 have already complied. Of the 12 that have not yet complied, most are within their time frame to respond anyway, and only 2 of them were found to be missing 1 or more of the required hours. As for our courses, the availability of all of our courses seems to be adequate for our licensees, our dispensers, our audiologists, and we have not heard anything from any of them that they are struggling to find their required courses in order to renew their license. And that is the end of the education report. Is there any questions?
Okay, thank you, Allison. This is Jody DeLallo again. No. Oh, I'm sorry. Go ahead.
This is Allison Lacey again, and I am now going to give the examination report. Our examination report was presented at the September 9th meeting, and we provided statistics for the examinations administered from January 1st, 2019 to present. The examination statistics for the months of September, October, and November of 2019 are as follows. 14 written exams were administered statewide with a 64% pass rate. 34 ear mold practical exams were administered statewide with a 97% pass rate. And lastly, 10 audiometric practical exams were administered statewide with a 100% passing rate. And as a net end note here, there have been no written or practical exam site changes this year. And that's all I have for exam report. Are there any questions?
Okay, thank you. So we'll move along to.
I think we have
So
one.
you said 64%.
Yep, in the written exams, 64%.
So does that mean even though they passed the other parts of the exam, they.
That percentage is only referring to the written exams. The 2 practical exams I spoke about are the other component of the education. So for just written exams, 64% is the pass rate. And then for the 2 types of practical exams, we have that very big 97% and 100% pass rate.
So those who were down in 64 category, they're still not.
They have to take it again.
Yeah, that's correct. They would have to take that exam again.
Any other questions? Okay. Telecoil ALD Study Subcommittee, Dave Mosberg.
Thanks. This is Dave Mosberg. On November 6th, the Telecoil ALD Subcommittee held a meeting to discuss a possible regulatory proposal that was brought up at our prior meeting, one in which would have required the dispenser to obtain the signature on the invoice or some other document at the time of the sale, acknowledging disclosure of Telecoil and other ALD systems or devices. So the subcommittee met to discuss that possible proposal. During the subcommittee meeting, we had a sort of frank discussion about what the legal requirements were to enact such a regulation. And after considerable thought, that proposal was tabled for the moment, and the subcommittee thought of several other proposals to ensure that the consumers were adequately informed about telecoils and assisted listening devices. And so what we discussed to bring to the full board were several recommendations that I'm going to present shortly, with the idea that if these are accepted, that department staff will then try to move forward with these proposals, and then we possibly be able to report back at our future meetings. And so one of the proposals that was discussed was to partner with the Division of Consumer Protection, which is a division within the Department of State. They do considerable outreach and consumer protection initiatives, and so we thought that potentially partnering with them specifically on a new outreach program might sort of achieve the desired effect of ensuring consumer awareness. Another proposal is to possibly coordinate and reach out to our partners over at the State Division on Human Rights for possible enforcement of existing laws to promote looping throughout the state. We're currently working with DHR on an initiative regarding one of our other licensing disciplines. So we sort of have the resources to connect with them, and so we think potentially we would reach out to them with a proposal on this issue. Relatedly is to invite DCP and DHR, Division of Consumer Protection and Division of Human Rights, at the next board meeting. So we would be able to discuss sort of a strategy to move forward with these proposals. And then the last proposal that was discussed was to look into the possibility of updating our renewal application forms for all of our licensees to remind them about the obligation that was recently amended on continuing education on the Telecoil ALD, as well as a question or some sort of statement in bold about, reminding them about their obligation to inform consumers about telecoils. As everyone's probably aware, we recently changed the continuing education requirement, and so the licensees that are now subject to them are going to have to be affirming that they took the class, and they're going to be subject to audit. And so we think that if we put it on the application, something that they'll see frequently and periodically, that it'll sort of remind them that they have this continuing obligation, not only on education, but also to disclose this information to their consumers. So in lieu of advancing a regulatory proposal at the moment, we're proposing these 4 different ideas. and then we'll be able to see in the future whether or not there is a identifiable consumer protection issue with consumers not really being informed of telecoils. So I don't know if any other subcommittees members want to speak or if any board members have questions, but now I think it's the time.
Dave?
Yeah.
This is Eric Freeman. One of the conversations I've been having also outside of the board membership is finding out how many of our providers that I've reached out to are talking about T-coiling and so forth. And the number is not that bad. It's about 70% that I think are doing their job, that 30%, which Jerry, you mentioned before, we definitely need to do a better job. So I'm going to be having further discussion about reaching out to dispensers through New York State to make sure they engage the regulations that we have, make sure the forms, the brochures are being handed out at time of dispense and or at time of purchase, or even at what we call a tested not sold, so they have all that information. But I've also had some great insight from a few people that have said, and Jerry, this was an area I think you could help with, is, bear with me 1 second. Peter made a comment about how many people have called in for enforcement. Were there any complaints about the T-coiling not being talked about? Peter, if I have that correct, you mentioned that at the last meeting, and we had no complaints on that, correct?
I don't recall asking about any complaints on T-coils, no.
Okay. But that being said, if there's no complaints on T-coiling, the only way the state's going to move forward is through the enforcement process. So through Jerry, reaching out through HLAA, if people are not being informed, the consumer advocacies have to be taking responsibility and putting on the consumers who, say, hey, this provider did not do the job and did not state that issue, and that way a proper complaint can be filed through. Because the concern I have is if we are not doing our job, then the state will regulate further more of what we need to do and more enforcement. So, but that's a consumer-based issue more than anything else. The other part I came across, and I hope this also helps, this is more consumer-driven, but our providers can do a better job on this, is finding out the venues in their area, reaching out to their government agencies to work on getting their communities looped, going first maybe through the county buildings and so forth and libraries to say, we got to get conference rooms looped and so forth, and how can we do this? Local cinema, Central Run Cinema in my area, we spoke about this, and they're more than willing to put looping into their theaters. They have like eight different cinemas to work through. The question came up, there was cost. And the question that they put to me is, are there any tax breaks or incentives for public or private facilities to get help from New York State to pay or offset some of the costs for the looping, which is mandated by ADA anyhow? So that's a couple questions to put forward, see what we could do more to get the information out to the providers through Hearing Healthcare Alliance New York or through the state through a mailer, to our providers. That might be a good step.
This is Jerry. I served on the subcommittee, and I first want to thank Dave Mossberg and colleagues for facilitating our discussion, and the report that Dave gave a moment ago, I think, is very well thought out, and I think that Eric's comments do underscore that this is not simply a hearing healthcare, hearing aid dispensing issue, but it's a consumer issue. So there definitely is that overlap, and it's also a human rights issue, which gets at Eric's second point about the relationship between telecoils and hearing loops. I think it would be a mistake for this board to go down the road of promoting hearing loop technology. I must spend hours and hours every week doing that, but I think that short of recommending that the building department or state building codes require telecoils in all new construction and renovation, I think that we'd be really going off on a tangent. So I think that the point about telecoils is not simply that you can use your hearing devices if you have a telecoil in a looped large venue. The ADA also requires now hearing aid compatible assistive listening under the law. You cannot have hearing aid compatible assistive listening with a neck loop if you don't have a T-coil. So the issue is telecoils, not hearing loops. And I think that's an important distinction we all need to keep in mind. I would close by saying that when I joined, first started to attend as a public member, this board, one of the board members circulated an email about my comment as a consumer regarding telecoils. And Pete, you might remember this, he said, Bluetooth is the technology. Telecoils are old hat, passé. Well, the research still shows that anything better than telecoil technology for large area assistive listening is still 5, 10, or 15 years down the road. And we have documentation on that. I should also mention that we will be glad to work with, the Hearing Loss Association, will be glad to work with the Department of Consumer Education to document the number of times that consumers say they were either uninformed about telecoil availability or simply fitted with hearing aids. The subject never came up, or they were given a hearing aid with a telecoil and never instructed on how to use it, or it was never activated. So again, thank you, Dave, for pointing out that that goes a little beyond the scope of this board. And I want to commend the board for all the education it's been doing via the signage and via promoting the new requirement for an hour of telecoil training for license renewal.
This is Peter. You all know that I'm a proponent of T-coils and loops. I've had a loop in my office for 27 years. People love it when I turn their T-coil on and plug the radio in and the loop goes right into their ear. They love it. But I also have a habit of playing devil's advocate. And I put a few numbers together just so I know how important this really is to be discussing. If a person wears their hearing aid about 16 hours a day, in a year they have worn it just a little bit less than 6,000 hours. Then I said, well, how often is a person going to have the opportunity to use a T-coil in a looped system? Well, if they happen to be religious and go to their house of worship every weekend, they may have an opportunity if the place of worship is looped for an hour in order to use the loop. And then, occasionally they may go somewhere else where a loop is available. So if we put those figures together, I figure the average person would have an opportunity of about 60 hours of using a loop every year, which, related to the number of hours that they use their hearing aid, is about 1% of the time. So what we're really discussing here is technology that's going to be used about 1% of the time. So if it's worthy of our further discussion, I'm ready to do it. But I also like to look at things realistically, and although I am a proponent of T-coils and loops, it's not something that everyone is using every day, all day long.
This is Jerry. I just need to respond to that. Peter mentioned that people who can't hear sermons in their house of worship are looking to get hearing loops installed in those places. Across the country, we have many worshipers who are thrilled to death that they have telecoils and can participate in their religious services. I think if it's 1%, it's a critical 1%. Similarly, if you take an average 75-year-old person with a hearing aid who's gone to theater throughout their whole life and suddenly finds they can't hear the theater or enjoy the concerts that they've enjoyed their entire life, aren't they entitled to the best possible accessibility which telecoils provide? And I would close by saying you wouldn't use a statistic to tell people in wheelchairs that they don't need ramps, because they don't go to places with ramps more than 1% of the time. This is a human rights issue, so I'm a little shocked at the statistics that are being tossed around.
Any more discussion on this item? Okay. Under new business, educating consumers in New York State about over-the-counter hearing aids entering the market in 2020. Ann?
Hi, this is Ann Orsini. Can everybody hear me okay?
Yep.
Okay, so I just wanted to give a little report on some updates on the Over-the-Counter Hearing Aid Act of 2017 that was approved by Congress and signed by President Trump on August 18th, 2017. In November, Janetta and I attended the Academy of Doctors of Audiology convention in Washington, D.C., and we did get some updates. Since it's getting close to 2020, I thought it was the perfect time for the board to start discussing this important issue that is going to affect consumers and dispensing professionals. So the Over-the-Counter Hearing Aid Act of 2017 requires the FDA to create and regulate a category of over-the-counter hearing aids for adults with perceived mild to moderate hearing loss, and to ensure the devices meet the same high standards for safety, consumer labeling, and manufacturing protection that all medical devices must meet. The legislation requires the FDA to establish an over-the-counter hearing aid categories within 3 years of passage of the legislation, or August 18th, 2020, this year. The FDA was supposed to issue its first proposed rules in November of 2019 and finalize a rule within 180 days after the close of the comment period. The notice of proposed rulemaking regulations that had been slated for release in November have been delayed and are likely to be released sometime in the first quarter of 2020 or potentially later. It's very likely that the very earliest the proposed regulations for OTC hearing aid devices would be available for public comment is January or February of 2020. Hearing devices traditionally have had a lower priority in comparison with other life-saving medical devices, and the FDA continues to have a backlog of issues requiring attention. The vastly differing state dispensing laws and regulations regarding both traditional and online hearing aids may also be complicating the rulemaking process. Uh-oh. Did you guys lose me?
No.
No.
Okay.
We can hear you.
It just cut out on the side. Okay, so when the legislation passes, the FDA will be removing the requirement for the medical clearance waiver, and the states cannot override that. So state hearing aid licensing laws will need to be updated to be in compliance with the new federal law. I spoke to a lot of audiologists in other states who've said that their boards have already begun discussing and making plans for when the regulations come out. As a member of the dispensing board, we need to be able to answer questions from consumers, audiologists, and dispensers in New York State by the time the new legislation is in place. So I'm recommending that the board be put together a subcommittee to begin discussing how we will inform consumers about the differences between PSAPs, OTCs, and hearing aids. There are a variety of things that the state can do to prepare for the coming of OTCs, from things like putting a frequently asked question page on the website to including this information in a consumer brochure. The members of this board will very likely be called upon to answer questions regarding the new classification of hearing aids, and the time is now to start preparing for this, as the proposed regulations will likely be out before the next board meeting. I think that we can't wait till March, if the rules come out, to start thinking about this. I feel that the subcommittee, once assembled, would be able to review the proposed rules from NPRM and see how it could affect the New York State hearing aid dispensing statute. It would also allow us to give a voice in the comment period. There's a 120-day comment period from when the initial rules are laid out. So I think we need to be reviewing them, see how it could affect New York State hearing aid dispensing law, and just be on top of this. So when we start getting calls from consumers and other professionals asking about this, that we're prepared to answer them. So I guess I'm asking who feels that this is a good idea to form a subcommittee, and who'd like to be on it?
Me. I'd like to be on it, Anne. That's Janetta speaking. I definitely think it's a very important issue because we don't want to be on the defense. We need to know what kind of questions to anticipate. We need to know if this is even in our scope to end up talking about this, because if it's over the counter, then do we have a say? I think we still have a say in terms of educating our consumers, which is what, from what I understand, this board is designed to do. So if everyone, we've been talking about rights of T-coil and things like that. Well, with over-the-counter, we're talking about possibly moderate hearing losses not being fit with appropriate amplification and clearance. I mean, we don't know. It might be a really positive thing, but it might have certain aspects that we need to be on the lookout for. So I think we do have that opportunity, given that we provide already a lot of information to us via our website and brochures and whatever. So that would be the least expensive start. But what exactly we should be saying, we might not know until the ruling comes out, but we should at least have an idea of where we stand, so that when we do start getting these phone calls and emails, we know how to address them. So I definitely want to be on the subcommittee.
Okay,
Hello,
so yeah, it's a great, no, go ahead.
This is Peter. One of the things very concrete in this 1652 is that it indicates that whatever the feds decide to do, are not going to be altered by any state legislation. And so we really need to wait for the regulations to be written up, and we are privy to it, so that then we can have a concrete discussion. Because right now, this is it's empty. It means nothing to us until we find out exactly what their regulations are going to be.
Is there? This is Tony Massara. Is there like a draft of the regulations anywhere, laid out anywhere, or something that might be?
Yes, this one. So it says mild to moderate, but again,
but that's
it's
been
going
from the
to change.
beginning.
Correct. So we don't know exactly what it's going to be, but we need to start the conversation. And you're right, Peter. We can't know exactly what it is, but from my short experience on a board, everything has to be written. We can't just randomly bring it up. So if we are to wait and then say, okay, now that this is out, maybe we should propose having a proposed conversation is not really the most efficient way to do it, but that's why we're raising it now before it comes up, so that when it does come out, we're already ahead and we're allowed to be sort of discussing it and everyone is on the same page. Does that make sense?
This is
Jerry. Sorry. So this is Ann Orsini, and I just wanted to state once again, the reason why I'm bringing it up now is because those rules are likely to come out in January or February, and our next board meeting isn't until March. So if we had a subcommittee assembled and the regulations come out, that would give us a time to review them, have a discussion, and then present to the board in March. If the rules aren't out yet, the subcommittee could at least start talking about ways that we can educate consumers once the information is released. Once again, other states are doing this. They're preparing for this. New York State should be as well.
All right, so hi, this is Jody. I think it's a great idea to form the subcommittee today, at today's meeting, to get ahead of any regulations that'll be drafted. We can form the subcommittee and hold a meeting when it's appropriate. So Denise can facilitate. We will also include David Mossberg as a subcommittee member, as our general counsel. And so, yeah, I think today is the day to get the subcommittee together, and then based on what happens, then you can schedule a meeting to discuss the issues.
Thank
This
you.
This is Tony Massara. I would certainly like to be on this committee, the subcommittee, and help out.
This is Jerry. I'm not volunteering to be on this subcommittee, but our Hearing Loss Association has a member in Rochester who's been following this issue very closely, and he sent me some documentation today. I think all of us at this meeting view over-the-counter hearing aids as a two-edged sword. The Hearing Loss Association was supportive of the federal legislation that created it because it brings the majority of people walking around with undiagnosed hearing loss, but who know they can't hear, hopefully brings many of them into the healthcare system so they can start to try to deal with their hearing loss and understand how much better their lives are when they can hear. So that's the plus side of it. On the downside, there are lots of concerns about volume and the damage that volume can cause if they tune these devices up too loud. They may not be properly evaluated from a medical standpoint because their condition may not be sensory neural, may be something else. Professional testing by an audiologist is still the best way for people to go. We all, I think, agree on that. And I include dispensers.
Thank you,
A
Jerry.
lot of it comes down to labeling. And so if David will dig into the legal aspects of this and what the state has the authority to do, I think that the subcommittee can look at the need for volume control instructions on labels, selectable tone controls for bass and treble, clarity, the inclusion of a telecoil. Here we go again. Does this over-the-counter device enable me to use a neck loop? Does it enable me to hear a sermon in a church or another public venue? Can it be used with multiple microphones? Are there smartphone links that we can use to hear better on the telephone? And is it Bluetooth compatible? So those are all the kinds of questions that come up, and the uninitiated consumer, and I think back to when I first started to lose my hearing loss, is really a babe in the woods, and we want to try to steer them all in the right direction. So my question is, can I forward to Denise the name of our member in Rochester who's been very involved in this and ask if he might be on the subcommittee?
Sure, you can do that.
Thank you. I will do that.
And this is Ann Orsini once again. So, Jerry, I read everything that the Hearing Loss Association of America has put out on the website about over-the-counters, and they've actually really given this a lot of thought and have great information. They actually already have a lot of, ideas of how we can inform consumers, and they're more than likely going to have a frequently asked question on their website. So, it's something we might be able to work with them so we're not recreating the wheel on some of this. So I know that the Hearing Loss Association is going to request that the FDA also have some information available, frequently asked questions. So I think this could all fit together. So I think that's a great idea.
Okay. Did you have?
Some of it pretty much kind of answered along those lines. It's basically going back to consumer relation, making sure the information gets put out there so the consumers know what's the difference between a PSAP, a OTC, and so forth. And a small thing on that is I have clients that have come into my office with PSAPs, and they're plugged in dirty, full of wax, and they're not working. And when I talk to them about, oh, let's get a hearing aid, they say, I have a hearing aid. So we had to make sure New York State is distinguishing the difference between an OTC, a PSAP, and a properly prescribed fitting hearing aid system. If we're not doing that, then we're actually taking away from our consumers, the citizens of New York, better hearing options. And that involves everything that Jerry said about, will it have a T-coil or not? So something that can get maybe put onto the site, our New York State site eventually, about what these devices are, and getting that information out to our providers as well, so that they know how to properly inform their consumers, would be a good start.
Okay. Well, thank you, everyone. Thank you, Ian.
Hi, this is Peter. I have something to say.
Sure.
I know Ann is concerned about the regulations being available before we have our next meeting. But I do believe that most of us belong to professional organizations, whether it's ASHA or the International Hearing Society, or in New York State, the Hearing Healthcare Alliance of New York. But these entities are on top of this, and if you do, it's very important for professionals to have an organization that will provide them with the information as soon as it's available. So I think that most of us will be privy to the information before the next meeting, and then we'll have an opportunity to discuss it at that meeting. That's it.
Any other discussion on this topic? Thank you. So
I'm sorry,
oh,
sorry, just one more. So, how many people do we have on the subcommittee?
right now we have 1, 2, 3, 4 people.
And Jody, if you got me.
And Eric, that's 5 people.
Okay, thank you.
Yep.
Plus Dave.
No, that includes Dave. That
I have
includes Dave.
Ann, Janita, Anthony,
Eric,
Jerry's nominee,
and Dave.
Eric.
Yep, and Jerry's.
and Dave.
Okay, if he's interested. All right, very good. So I believe the next item, Denise has some board housekeeping items to discuss. Denise.
Before we go ahead, Jody, I have another new business item I'd like to just briefly mention.
Denise.
Is that okay?
Yes,
Can you
Jerry,
hear
that's
me?
okay. Yep, yep.
All right. I was pleased, thrilled to discover that, no thanks to anything I did, a law was passed, I think in September, and signed by the governor in October, if I have my dates right, perhaps sooner, that now requires captioning on TV monitors in all places of public accommodation in New York State. If I wasn't aware of this, I suspect that many around this table also were not aware of this. And more importantly, the law takes effect on July 1st. So we all have an opportunity to get the word out to people with hearing loss and, to the extent possible, to venues where TV monitors are playing, and that includes bars, restaurants, clinics, hearing aid offices, hospitals, all those kinds of waiting room areas, dentists, because captioning helps people who are deaf. Captioning helps people who are hard of hearing. And so I wonder if there's anything that the Division of Licensing can do to support getting the message out. We will do our part as a hearing loss association.
We can look into the law and the regulation and see if there's something that we could do that would benefit.
Yeah, a newsletter to your members just would require, your licensees, would just require a couple of lines saying it's now the law. Make sure you have closed captions on your TV monitors.
Yep, we'll look into that.
Thank you.
Okay, Denise Tidings.
Hi, Denise here. I just wanted to let you know that on the agenda, I have proposed some scheduled meeting dates for the board for next year. If any of those dates are not good for you or times, please let me know as soon as possible. That way it's easier for me to secure rooms for the meeting dates. I basically tried to switch the times and the days around a little bit because some of you had different suggestions about when you wanted to meet. The other thing is, if you have ideas for agenda items, please feel free to email me. I am serving as the board coordinator at this time. And third, on the left-hand side of your folder, there's a list, a table of the members, and I'm really trying to sort out all this information and make sure that we have the correct information on everyone. If you would just give it a look now to know whether or not yours is correct, and then you can email me and let me know if any changes are needed. I'm also going to, actually I think I already have sent out the dates to all of you for next year, so if you don't have this agenda handy, you'll have your email that you can refer to. and then look at your calendar then and let me know if, we need to change any of those dates around. And lastly, I'd like to remind any of the guests or public members, if you could please sign in if you haven't already. And that's it.
Thank you, Denise. So next is public comment period.
Jody, I have a question regarding the contact information. So one, we have this wonderful form that you put together, but the website is not up to date.
That is correct. And I've been working with our appointments office. This is Denise. And I've been working with our appointments office to correct all of the board member tables. We've had some new appointments, and there have been some changes. Even with our ex officios, there's some new ex officio members. So that should all be sorted out very soon, and that's why I want to make sure that the information that we have. Also, this information on this table, we use in-house. We need good information on you so that we can contact you for meetings and that, but then you might also want to indicate what information you do not want on the website so that I make sure we avoid anything that you don't want on there.
And my second, again, this is Eric Freeman, my second question along this line is what can the advisory board, the Department of State, assist in helping fill the vacant positions to move that along so we will maintain the quorums and get better representation, especially throughout New York State, not just portions of New York State.
What we typically do is ask the board members to send us names, send us resumes that we forward to the appointments office for their consideration, but we have, other than that, we have no control over the appointments, but we can forward resumes to the appointments office.
Okay, so that's
So we do. So if you know anyone that's interested in joining the board, have them send their resume to Denise, or you can forward their resumes and a letter of interest to Denise, and we'll help facilitate that. Any other questions? All right, we'll move on to public comment. Is there anyone from the public in Buffalo that would like to address the board?
No.
Is there anyone in New York that would like to address the board?
No.
Nope.
Okay. Here in Albany, would any of the public like to address the board? Okay, Fred?
Hello, I'm Fred Goosen. I'm the Executive Director of the Hearing Healthcare Alliance of New York. I'm also a registered, not licensed, hearing aid dispenser in New York State for the last 24 years. Very good program. Very good program. I was delighted at some of the engagement we got, especially OTC. Those of us in the profession know the problem with OTC will be, number one, none of the people who buy them will like them because they won't do what they think hearing aids should be doing, and the concern is they'll turn around and walk away from seeking help because they've proven to themselves and to their fans, these damn things don't work. Number two, and it was brought up briefly, there will be some medically related problems that are not going to be discovered. Perforated eardrums, acoustic neuroma, difficulties with the various other vestibular situations, as well as the cochlea itself. Those will not be recognized and go hidden. But I think overall, I think the OTC needs this. Consumer Protection Agency should be involved with this, and I encourage the board to consider using their program as part of this organization, because again, people who do these OTCs are maybe overlooking some medical, personal, physical problems that will not be discovered as they would be in a professional's office. So I just encourage that aspect of this, because I know we can't do anything else. I love the idea of getting involved with looping the issue of, yes, we turn our clients out with these instruments, but they have no place to use them. And I think the tax credit's a great idea. I think some ideas along that line would be just excellent. FDA flags are still in place in New York State for non-OTC hearing aids. They are still there, and the requirement for that, although the federal government is not enforcing it for non-OTC hearing aids, it's still there. Partnering with HLA to help them everything they can do there. Jerry, we're ready to do that. The renewal forms. Hearing aid dispensers must take 20 hours of credits every 2 years. Your renewal form has 5 blanks. Most courses are 1 hour long. We need at least 15 more blanks, because that's confusing to some of the new people who have never seen that before. So we need some more, or we might suggest, if they, and I ask my people who, when they're renewing, to submit the certificate of completion that I give at the end, which is approved by the department. I give them when they leave the program, and bang, it's right in front of you. I know Mark and Allison, we've talked about this many times, but they need to know how do they prove this thing? And that would greatly cut down on your audit problem. Because there it is. It has a course number, it has a course name, it has a provider, and it has everything that's needed to be required. And I think that would be able to speed that up, because we've had many discussions, and I'm the guy who gets the phone call. How do I do this? But overall, I thank the department. You guys are always great. I call your office and with some problems and people who are confused and so forth. But really appreciate the work, Allison, that you and Mark do, and some of the rest of you too. But we're really with those guys. Thank you.
Thank you, Fred. Is there anyone else that would like to address the board? Okay. Well, can someone make a motion to adjourn? Lawrence, second? Okay.
Second.
Meeting adjourned. Thank you, everyone.
You're welcome.
Here. I can't believe these numbers for Long Island and Queens.
I know.
I know. Is that real?
Information for physicians.
When I say play devil
advocate, one of my pet peeves. And why did you wait so long?
Okay, but this goes through my
They
mind.
always say, well, I didn't know I
How
was
often will somebody use one of these things? If we don't talk about it, if we don't think about it, we're not doing our job.
But these numbers are incredible. What do you have, somebody on every block?
Like I told you.
No, I know.
I had a loop in my office longer than anybody ever thought about it.
Hearing evaluation after 2 years after age of 50.
Yeah, the minutes.
The other issue is
They
that
got passed.
a lot of them do are here.
I don't want their
Possible. There's no room for the booth. There's no room.
I heard that.
No room for declines because of the rechargeable battery.
But I asked Barbara, who's here the last time. She knows everything. She said there's a way around that.
I don't know how. I've asked the hearing aid company that question. And there's no hearing
You
aid.
don't have to have a rechargeable battery.
I understand.
That's the answer.
But the thing is that a lot of
for hearing.
really did look at it very closely.
There's a pro and con to both. Me being involved with that, if I engage more dispense more doctors to talk about, they'll funnel through their systems to audiologists, not dispensers. But what I want to see happen is I want conversational production instead of your hearing evaluation. And this is, I know, the stickler point with ENT Group, New York, is with the amount of offices they have, they're going to get about funneling. but we need to be opening that up to everybody in the community, all the dispensaries in the area. That's what we have this wonderful list for. So who does the doctor know to send to? Here's a list of providers.
Yeah, I would. Were I,
And we're going to be
Just a thought.
I would.
regarding telecom.
We're not doing a subcommittee today. I thought we were doing a subcommittee meeting, Karen. Guess that got canceled. Denise?
Interesting group.
Yeah, are we doing another meeting?
I just shut it all down.
I thought so.
So did I.
Right, Ann? Right? Okay.
I'm here.
And Ann, I'm
Yes.
talking with Jason right now about how can our board reach out through the Department of Education to our physicians in New York State to open a conversation simply about hearing evaluations over the age of 50, making sure the the AMA, which is the recommendation every 2 years. That doesn't happen. Do you find that happening? The conversation? No.
No, I mean, we fight
No.
that all the time. I mean, we go in and meet with physicians, we give them,
Yeah.
self-tools, all kinds of things, and they just don't do it.
Right.
What I
They
would
don't do it.
We're going to shut this down, so you might go away, our IT office is gonna terminate.
All right, so there is no subcommittee meeting?
I don't think so. I think Dave kind of left, so I don't think we were at a point where we needed to
Stephen,
discuss anything.